Good afternoon. Let's get right down to business here, shall we? We do more at 4 weekday afternoons. We get right down to business with the news-driven hour right after Ben Shapiro and just before the 790 KABC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KABC, streaming live online worldwide at KBC.com. And, yep, the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, KBC.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, and all your favorite podcast platforms. Well, the Dow continues to wow at a record high close today, up 337 points to settle at 43,078. Another record high close for the Dow, above 43,000 once again after a bit of a breather yesterday. The S&P 500 moving up 27 at 5,842, and the Nasdaq settled at 51 at 18,367. Market getting a boost by the latest earnings news from big names including Morgan Stanley, and on the airline side, United Airlines moving higher today. The stock was up about 12.5% on its latest earnings report. The crypto's also getting a boost today. Bitcoin posting further gains, and taking a look at it right now, it's just below 68,000. It popped above 68K earlier today, the highest we've seen since the end of July. Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump's chance of winning the White House has climbed to levels last seen since late July, according to an average of betting markets provided by Real Clear Politics. Oil, meanwhile, down for the fourth session in a row. Oil prices holding ground at their lowest levels in a couple of weeks. Right now hovering just above $70 a barrel. Investors in exchange-traded funds tracking China stocks might be feeling some motion sickness, according to MarketWatch, after China's stock market rocketed higher late last month following fresh stimulus measures and then gave back a big chunk, but not all of it. We're watching what's happening there as well. Also, Amazon in a deal now for nuclear power, giving a boost to nuclear-related stocks, seeing some of their best performances of the year. As a matter of fact, the retail giant Amazon striking a deal that would lead to the building of 4 advanced small modular reactors, or SMRs as they're called, in Washington State. Retail theft, of course, still a big issue, with Walgreens announcing this week it's closing 1,200 stores for that reason as well as others. Meanwhile, LA's largest juvenile hall has been ordered shut down, probably at the worst possible moment. The state regulator has declared Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall in Downey must close in 60 days due to unsafe conditions caused by staffing issues. Los Padrinos is LA County's largest juvenile hall, currently housing about 300 inmates. Meanwhile, is LA going broke? According to the LA City Controller Kenneth Mejia, the city is paying out lawsuit settlements at a dangerous rate, causing his City of LA going broke alert, which he posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, this week. I'll discuss that and more with the Honorable Dennis Zine, former LA City Council member and former LAPD sergeant, currently LAPD Reserve officer with something like 56 years of service to the City of Angels. Dennis Zine, will be on the line live with us later this hour. Also coming up this hour, a giant on the L.A. commercial real estate scene, Giddy Cohen, developer and founder of CGI Plus, with more than a dozen apartment complexes around Los Angeles, with plans for more units in Hollywood as well as other parts of the U.S. Properties include Villa Carlotta, an historic residential apartment house which served as home to Hollywood icons, including Edward G. Robinson and David O. Selznick. But first, on your money, the markets and the economy and the whole works now, the one and only John Najarian. Dr. J, as he's known on the major financial networks, co-founder of Market Rebellion with his brother Pete. He has a laser eyes on, too, following the cryptos. His latest book is titled It's Not an Option. Learning how to trade options is no longer an option. It's a necessity. John Najarian, thank you very much for taking the call this afternoon. A record-shattering day for the Dow, a good day for the markets overall, and the cryptos also rallying. Give us your view of things here at the moment.
Yeah, well, just as you said, we've got a lot of positives right now. One of the negatives, China that you mentioned after that furious run and then pretty generous give back. China's one of the issues that is pushing on things like copper, but also keeping oil prices under control, really, because of what's going on in the Middle East. Israel says that they're not going to attack oil fields or nuclear facilities in Iran if and when they go into Iran. But the fact that China has not fully recovered yet is why we're seeing crude oil futures just barely holding on to the $70 level, which is good. It's good for the airlines. It's good for those of us who have ICE, internal combustion engines. And obviously shippers and truckers really appreciate the lower cost of fuel oil and or diesel. So I think a lot of us are paying attention to China, and not wishing them ill necessarily, but certainly the respite that they've taken since that furious run-up has been something that's been rather good for many of us, depending which sectors we're talking about.
Certainly, and as far as the political sector is concerned, China, of course, I'm sure watching what's happening here with the election less than a month away now, and we see that DJT stock, Donald J. Trump stock, as the symbol DJT, up more than $4 today at 31.26, seen as a proxy for the fortunes of former President Trump regaining the White House. It looks like, according to Real Clear Politics, the betting markets signal that he has a better chance of winning now. Best seen since late July. We had that huge volatile swing in DJT stock yesterday. What are your thoughts about this one, which we haven't talked too much about?
Well, as usual, Frank Mottek has his finger on the pulse, and you are exactly right, sir. There are really two things that tend to react very volatilely and positively if President Trump is seeing good news, and that is Bitcoin, because of the two candidates. He is the one that really supports digital currencies, not just central bank digital currency like Ms. Harris, but also his stock, which has now doubled in the past 2 months. So, we could pick a number of other billion-dollar companies. Nobody else that we're going to pick out there has doubled in the last 2 months. So if you go back 60 days, this is the number one stock to own. And it seems that every day his lead extends, according to Real Clear Politics, according to Polymarket, the swing state polls and all that. Everything is pointing in his direction. And then we have a Brett Baer, I believe his name is, over at Fox News. He has an interview tonight that they're airing. It will not be live, but they've been leaking out parts of it. And from what we hear, Ms. Harris does not come off well in that interview. And in fact, the exact opposite of coming off well. She is, people are pretty much saying this is it for her campaign after people see and hear this interview.
On the air live with Dr. John Najarian, and you mentioned it briefly. Cryptos are rallying, and again, appear to be cheering for President Trump as well. Bitcoin hitting above 68,000 here today. What do you make of the cryptos? What's your outlook for Bitcoin here?
Well, most things that are shiny, platinum, gold, and silver, have done exceedingly well in the past few months. Bitcoin, of course, has done very well, and as you say, trading at record levels, or very, very close to those record levels. And meanwhile, Ethereum, sort of like when we talk about how well gold does, many of us overlook silver, even though silver on a percentage basis has done even better this year than has gold. But I think Ethereum might be rather undervalued at 2,600 and change. It's basically back and forth across a relatively tight band. And if that one gets some wind in its sails, I think it could outperform Bitcoin in the short term being like 30 or 60 days. So I've been lightening up a little bit on Bitcoin and buying more Ethereum here at these levels.
On the air live with John Najarian, what about some of those altcoins? We frequently quote Doge and Shiba Inu. We keep an eye on that one. Anything that's been catching your attention in the meme coins and in the altcoin world?
Well, not so much lately. I must admit, I'm just really focused on these two, the two biggest, if you will, cryptocurrencies. But I did note, and again, you're right on top of it with the Amazon play on these mini nukes, if you will. Whether it's NNE, which is nano-nuclear, or any of its competitors. I mentioned nano because I own that one, but so many of these, I think, have huge potential because maybe part of the problem with nuclear was they were so big and the facilities took so long to get approved and get built, and then they had 25-year time frames, and then they had to basically shut them down. A lot of these mini nuclear facilities are not much bigger than a big generator. And yet, if they can provide clean power, on-the-spot power for the likes of data centers and large buildings and things of that nature, they're not something that's going to replace a Generac for people that need power in storm areas, but they certainly are going to be very popular with businesses that would really like to be able to define for years and even decades what their costs are going to be for power. And they would be running their own power if they were given that option. And I think that's likely to be something that we focus on a lot over the next 18 to 24 months.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, energy use for crypto mining, right? As well as, of course, AI, too. I know no conversation is complete without at least mentioning AI here. So what about that component? And maybe you can explain to the audience why it's going to take so much energy, not only crypto, but
Sure.
AI as well.
Sure. Well, the AI, when it makes a query, it is not just going to one central database. The AI, depending on which one we're talking about, ChatGPT, Grok, which is over with the former Twitter known as X now. For the premium members, they have Grok, which basically you can ask it any question, and it's not just going to a Google search. It is querying every asset at its fingertips, if you will. I know that's a personification, but the draw is tremendous. It's about, I've heard as much as 11 times the energy draw of a Google search, and people are using it more and more. Businesses are using it more and more. It's going to be pretty dramatic how much it ramps up the demand for energy. And of course, clean energy goes right back to nuclear, which is the cleanest energy that we have, really. Solar is clean once you've got the solar panels, once you've got the wind turbines and so forth, but getting the parts and getting the things that make that work is not terribly clean, and in fact creates a little bit of an environmental mess. And I know you mentioned United as well, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the fact that the regulators did not let Spirit Airlines merge, that is something that is causing them to be on that verge of bankruptcy. And United Airlines said that that's benefited them in a big way because discount airline shoppers are basically shopping at American and United and Delta for their lowest super economy fares on those airlines. Now, you don't get much with those. You can't check bags and things like that. You have to pay extra, much like you do at Spirit or Frontier. But that is one of the reasons that stock was up 12 to 15% today, just as Frank said. It's not just lower crude oil prices. It's the idea that a lot of the usual buyers of Spirit Airline tickets are now over there buying United, American, and Delta tickets.
And Delta stock also participating in today's rally, up nearly 7%. Spirit, they wanted to merge with JetBlue. What do you think of JetBlue here? Of course, it looks like Spirit's on the ropes. Would you touch that at all? And what are your thoughts about some of the other airline names here?
Oh, I've bought Spirit, and the reason I bought it, Frank, was that I've kicked myself in the past when I've purchased, for instance, a bankrupt American Airlines and got out of it too quickly, or any of the other airlines like United when they've gone into bankruptcy protection and the shares go to almost nothing, and then 6 months later it's a $20 stock. I didn't want to see that happen in Spirit, symbol SAVE, save. So I have been accumulating it on this dip below $2. And I like the opportunity because I don't really think the FAA and Pete Buttigieg wants to let a competitor go out of the space because I think it means higher ticket prices for everybody. So as much as they didn't want to let them merge with JetBlue, I don't think they have a choice in terms of honoring tickets, in terms of not putting additional pressure on seats for all the other air carriers. I think they will do everything they can to let this one be perhaps a bankruptcy filing, but an emergence out of bankruptcy, much like those other airlines I just described.
All right. What about JetBlue, which is about $7 here at the moment, up 19 cents at 7.12? What about JetBlue here?
I like JetBlue, and they've been expanding and they've been adding a lot of their so-called Mint seats, which are those Airbuses, which is all they fly, of course, Airbuses. But they've been adding those lie-flat seats that are known as Mint to many of their longer routes, and that seems to be a real hit and obviously a real moneymaker for them to be able to have, just like the other airlines, a lot of the rest of the plane helping defer the cost of that flight, and then those first class or Mint seats become the added boost that really helps on the revenue side.
All right. Circling back to the big picture here, a lot of talk now about the Fed's next move and maybe a second guessing whether they're going to cut again, given the latest readings on jobs and inflation and so forth. What do you think the interest rate outlook is at this point?
I think the day after the election, we'll be lucky to see a 25 basis point cut. There's a lot of Fed speakers that are pushing back even on that. I think we will get it. Obviously, it's still a majority of the Fed tool that the CME puts up every day, but I don't think that it's going to be 50 basis point cut after 50 basis point cut. I think it's going to be much smaller cuts, and then they're going to have to wait and see because there really is still a lot of inflation percolating through the system.
All right, and last but not least, let me ask you the big question here, John Najarian. Any specific places where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Well, we do like nuclear for all the reasons you and I spoke of, and I also like the uranium plays because both of us know that until we actually get fusion rather than fission reactions, you're talking primarily about uranium. And uranium producers like Camco, which is symbol CCJ, has been in my portfolio for the better part of 2 years now, and it's been one of the standout stocks. A lot of these uranium plays came into focus when Russia invaded Ukraine because a lot of the uranium that we used to get would be from areas of Ukraine and Russia. And right now, that's unavailable to most of the world. So Canadian and U.S. uranium tend to be pretty big demand, and I don't see that easing for quite a while. So I'd say Camco, UUUU, that's a four-letter symbol, 4 U's. Both of those, CCJ and UUUU, are two of my favorite picks.
Well, thank you, John. You're always terrific here. We do appreciate it, and I have to remind the folks about your latest book. It's not an option. Anything catching your attention in the options market here, and tell us more about the book if you want to.
Sure. Well, in the options world, one of the things that we always talk about is volatility, and the volatility in the market has been easing as both the somewhat certainty, it's not a certainty yet, of course, but as it becomes more and more likely that Trump is the nominee, not just nominee, but is the winner in the election, it seems that more and more people are willing to put money on the table, and that's taking a little of the uncertainty away. So, recent highs of volatility in the 23, 24 range have given way to like 19, perhaps pushing down into the 18 range, which means uncertainty is fading. And it's also something that we pay attention to in the crude oil space with the symbol OVX, which is the volatility of crude oil futures and how that contract moves. Given what Israel said this week, it has been easing the same way that the S&P volatility, the VIX, has been easing. And anybody that wants that free book, just go on over to itsnotanoption.com. You can claim your free book, and we'd be delighted to have you give us any input at marketrebellion.com.
Terrific, John. Well, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon. We'll continue to follow you on X, formerly known as Twitter, in the meantime as well. Until our next conversation, John Najarian, Dr. J as he's known in the major financial networks, co-founder of Market Rebellion. And the latest book, once again, is titled It's Not an Option. Learning How to Trade Options is No Longer an Option. It's a Necessity. John Najarian, thank you very much. We wish you a wonderful evening and look forward to speaking with you again very soon.
Thank you very much, Frank. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you very much. And out to the freeways we go now on 790 KABC. Friends, it's Frank Mottek here. Did you know that for more than 10,000 years, gold has been the greatest store of value and considered a safe haven asset to preserve your wealth? Now, with the U.S. debt at more than $35 trillion and climbing, not to mention the Biden administration getting us involved in costly wars, developing the digital dollar, central bank digital currency, and inflation spiraling, it's more critical now than ever before to safeguard your assets, like your cash savings and retirement accounts with physical gold. Opening a gold IRA is one of the best ways to secure your wealth and create a stable financial future. Stop worrying about your retirement and the market and cash savings in the bank. Feel confident, prepared, and in control with physical gold and silver. Give Joe Morgan a call now at 1-800-753-8534. Mention your humble servant, Frank Mottek, and you could get $1,000 worth of silver with a qualifying purchase. Again, that number to call for Joe Morgan is 1-800-753-8534 or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com. Wait for it. 790 KABC welcomes Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons coming to the Long Beach Terrace Theater November 22nd. Tickets on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. Right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-795-2222. You can get a pair of tickets to the show if you are caller number 9. Call right now, 1-888-795-2222. The tickets are furnished by Nederlander Concerts. Stocks ending the day higher with the Dow at a record high close of more than 300, up 337 at 43,078. The S&P 500 of 27 at 5,842. And the NASDAQ gained 51 at 18,367. The rally continues after a breather yesterday. The yield in the 10-year note has eased now to 4.02%. United Airlines stock in the plus column today on its latest earnings news, up nearly 12.5%. Delta up nearly 7%. The volatility index today slipping 5%. Gold pulling back $1.60 here in after-hours trading at $2,689.70 an ounce. We see a silver hovering just below $32 an ounce. Oil right now just below $71 a barrel. Bitcoin having a big day today, popped above 68,000, up about $20 now at 67,762. Ethereum up 3 at 2,622. And Doge has moved higher as well at 13 cents. And now the latest news for you here on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Good afternoon. Retail theft still a big issue here in Southern California. Meanwhile, LA's largest juvenile hall has just been ordered to be shut down, probably at the worst possible moment. As state regulators declared Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall in Downey must close in 60 days due to unsafe conditions caused by staffing shortages. Meanwhile, is L.A. going broke? According to the L.A. City Controller, Kenneth Mejia, the city is paying out lawsuit settlements at a dangerous rate, causing his City of L.A. going broke alert, which he posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, this week. Let's bring in the Honorable Dennis Zine now, former L.A. City Council member, former LAPD Sergeant, current LAPD Reserve Officer, something like 56 years of service to the City of Angels. Dennis Zine is on the line. Good afternoon, Dennis Zine.
Good afternoon, Frank. Good afternoon to you and your wonderful listeners.
Wonderful to have you with us here as always. Thank you very much for taking the call here. First, on the crime issue, give us your reaction to the latest crime reports and Juvenile Hall being shut down at the same time.
Well, it doesn't surprise me, the crime statistics. It doesn't surprise me on Juvenile Hall. That place has needed revamping for a number of years. A lot of situations that the county is responsible for have been ignored. Closing that, I don't know what facility they're going to have to house these juveniles. When we talk about juveniles, we think of little kids in school that are obeying their parents and going to school and doing what they're supposed to do, not going out to committing crimes. And sadly, we have a number of juveniles that resort to crime, very serious, vicious crimes. And unfortunately, you've got to put them someplace and try and keep them away from people so they don't harm the public. So that's a huge issue. That's not getting resolved quickly, and they're going to have to close it down because of the conditions that are existing. And on top of that, you have a city budget that's almost $13 billion. I think it's $12.8 billion, nearly $13 billion. Many issues have to be addressed, and they're not going to be addressed because, as the controller says, they're running out of money. the deficit, and a lot of lawsuits. And every time you hear a lawsuit, it's another $1 million here, another $1 million there. I mean, $1 million has become very common, multiple millions of dollars in some of these cases. So the city's facing a lot of problems, and the mayor is trying. She's got a council that is basically divided. Those that really have a sincere interest, those that don't have an interest in really doing what they need to do for all the people of Los Angeles. So the city's having a big crisis. And then he's got all these major events that are coming. They're talking about the Olympics, and they're talking about the World Cup and all these other events, which is going to take a lot of personnel resources, and putting it all together, it's going to cost a lot of money. I don't think the fire department still has a contract while the police do. The fire department, they don't have one for their personnel. So there's a number of issues on the plate, and all centers around money, resources, and the money and the revenue. That's a key factor. They're stuck until they come up with some solutions, and people aren't willing to pay more taxes. They're already getting taxed to death. So we know the election is coming up shortly, and we'll see how that works out as far as the tax issues go that are on the ballot. But the mayor has her hands full, and again, those council members need to come up with a resolution so we can provide these services for the people of Los Angeles. In many areas, people are paying on their property tax for street lighting, and there's many areas where there aren't no street lights. The street lights are out because they stole the wires. Those aren't getting repaired, yet people are paying for that. So it goes around. It's like a circus. It doesn't stop. It just keeps on going around and around.
On the line with the Honorable Dennis Zine, is the city of L.A. one pothole away from going bankrupt? I remember having this conversation years ago with the Honorable Richard J. Reardon, who was advocating that L.A. file for bankruptcy sooner rather than later, already back many years ago. How serious is the city's financial situation now?
Well, they've made cutbacks, and this budget was reduced from previous anticipated budget. So they did reduce it, but if you talk about $12.8 billion, and they don't have enough, and they're talking about the lawsuits, but the lawsuits are a factor. I mean, lawsuits less than $1 million are kind of rare when it comes to the city paying out money. And I don't know all the particular circumstances on those lawsuits, but if you watch television, every other commercial is about sue somebody, and lawsuits are very prevalent. And a lot of people like to sue the city, and they collect, which takes away those resources. They do have a budget, and it does have money in there for lawsuits. Unfortunately, it's exceeding what they put in that budget. But again, $12.8 billion, you would think they'd be able to manage everything, and yet you've got employees that don't have a contract. You've got problems with that. Now they want to increase the minimum wage because they want to anticipate for the Olympics and these other events to pay more people more money. I mean, and the voters are tired of taxes. So the mayor and the council are going to have some very difficult decisions to make. But clearly, there's a problem. They've got the money to hire police officers. They're not doing a very good job with that because people obviously don't want to join law enforcement. And this mayor has her hands full. I know that she is trying. I give her credit for that. But the budget that came out was approved, and now we're seeing that the budget's not sufficient. But if you can't live on $12.8 billion, then I don't know what we're going to do. And the only way you're going to get the money is by taxing the taxpayers, and they're fed up with taxes.
And as you've noted, L.A. extremely under-policed. How many officers do they need at this point? And you think under the new police chief, McDonald, things will turn around?
I don't think he's going to be able to increase the police department, to be honest with you. I know the man personally. I worked with him. He's a wonderful man. He'd be a wonderful leader for the department. But he's one person that has a whole command in place. One of the problems that has been made public is that people are applying, but many of them are failing the exam. There's an exam they have to take. They're failing the exam in large numbers. And the other situation is the background checks take so long. And I know that the city was talking about moving it away from personnel, giving it to the police department. Then when you give it to the police department, you're pulling officers out of the field to do the background checks. So you're going to do one thing, but you're going to jeopardize on the other side of the coin. Clearly, people are applying, but many of them are being rejected for a variety of reasons. And then you've got the backgrounds that take time because they go back a number of years to verify that they're going to be good, honorable police officers and do the right thing when it comes to law and order. So there's a lot of factors, but the numbers keep dwindling. They're not getting any larger, even though some people say, I want to be a police officer. But again, you've got to have a high standard. If you don't maintain a high standard, you're going to have problems, and those problems are going to create a lot of problems for the community.
And just the cost of living in L.A., right, on a teacher's salary, very difficult. And what about on a police officer's salary? Is there any consideration for police officers to afford the rent here?
They're given a subsidy now, believe it or not. They're given a subsidy for officers that are joining to help sustain them because the rents are so high. It doesn't matter if you're going to buy a house or rent an apartment. The rents are extremely high, but they're given a subsidy when they're coming on the job so they can afford a place to live. Unlike the Highway Patrol, with the Highway Patrol, you're at the academy and they house you there while you're going through the training. Here, you've got to venture to the 3 different police academies for the different training cycles you have to go through as a recruit. So a lot of people can't afford that. And again, it's extremely expensive, whether it's an apartment or a house. $1 million neighborhoods are not that uncommon in Los Angeles anymore. $1 million neighborhoods in the San Fernando Valley become very common. Again, that's a lot of money, and especially with the interest rates and the down payment to purchase a house. If you're a Marine, if you're Army, if you're military, you can find the government assist with that. But a lot of folks don't have the military background; they can't apply for those military loans. So there's a multitude of problems. I mean, a multitude of problems. And the controller has come up with the problem. We're having a funding situation. We're spending more than we're bringing in. And the other option is either cut the spending or increase taxes. I don't think anybody wants to increase taxes.
The Honorable Dennis Zine, we salute you for your service, going on 56 years of service to the City of Angels. The Honorable Dennis Zine, former LA City Council member, former LAPD Sergeant, current LAPD Reserve Officer. Dennis Zine, thank you very much for coming to the line.
Thank you, Frank. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, sir. And right out to the freeways we go now on 790 KBC.
It's a rich man's world.
Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Good afternoon. Joining us live now, a giant on the LA commercial and residential real estate scene in Los Angeles, Giddy Cohen, developer and founder of CGI Plus, with more than a dozen apartment complexes around Los Angeles. Plans for more units in Hollywood as well as other parts of the U.S. His properties include Villa Carlotta, an historic residential apartment house which served as home to Hollywood icons, including Edward G. Robinson and David O. Selznick. Giddy Cohen, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Thank you for having me, Frank.
Wonderful to have you with us here. I know you've done an amazing job with all of your properties here in Los Angeles, especially the beautiful restoration of iconic Art Deco properties here. Give us your view of things here in Hollywood and throughout Southern California at the moment.
Thank you for the compliment. We take a lot of pride at Villa Carlotta. Well, I think we're definitely in an intersection here. There is a shortage of housing, and there is a shortage of housing across the board, anyway from the affordable to workforce to high-end to luxury. And based on the circumstances right now, you obviously don't have a lot of transactions. And at this point, we have a lot of investors that are shying away from investing in California due to the unstable political environment. I think it's sad that in today's environment, that we're all aware that there is a shortage of housing, we can't find a happy medium in trying to win-win between the developers and the municipal and the city of Los Angeles. We have a lot of developers such as myself that pro-housing, pro-affordable housing, pro-workforce housing. However, it's a very difficult environment right now to either get a permit or get the jobs entitlement or to build. It would be nice to put together maybe a board of some kind of conversation between a group of developers in the city to find a place that will be able to resolve all these issues. I think just like myself, I've been living in LA for 30 years. I'm diehard to LA, big fan of LA. I have no plans to move out of LA. And it's sad that right now CGI is looking for other places to invest other than LA because we feel it's a much easier environment to work with.
What's it going to take to turn this around, given the challenging business environment you described here in Los Angeles with regulation? What does it take even to put up an apartment building these days?
I think it will take a good understanding both by regulations and the developers. It has to be a win-win. It has to be a win-win in the favor that at the end of the day for the developer, it's about economical numbers. And, of course, we want to make sure that we resolve the housing issue crisis. The more regulation we'll have in developers, the harder it will be to keep developers in town. So that's one. We're not looking for easier process per se. We understand it. But we're looking at maybe a higher density, maybe a higher heights restrictions. So I'll give you an example. I have a property on La Brea in Wilshire. It took me 6 years to entitle the property. Today, and it's just by the metro. it's a perfect area by MTA station. It's a perfect area to create more workforce housing. When we spoke to the city, there is no program to workforce housing. There is a program to low income. There is a program for affordable, but there is no program for workforce housing. For me, workforce housing is nurses, teachers, firefighters, police officers. They're not falling into the low income category or the affordable, and it's definitely not in the luxury. So increasing density in a location like that incentivize developer to come back to the city and create a win-win.
That is an excellent point, and certainly when we have our big Hollywood Chamber of Commerce economic forum coming up at the end of this month, we'll certainly raise that important point. And in the meantime, people having difficulty paying the rent, and this Proposition 33 is going to be on the ballot here soon, that if it passes, cities would be allowed to control rents on any type of housing, including single-family homes and new apartments and for new tenants. What's your thought about rent control in this particular proposition here?
Well, Prop 33 would basically replace Costa-Hawkins. At this point, you would have every city can control their own affordable and their own housing rules. So I think that what people are nervous about losing the rent control, I don't think it's just about the rent control. I think because if you look at the city of San Francisco right now, they want to pass a law that push the rent control to all the 1995 buildings. So it will basically prevent developers that once they have a vacant unit to reinvest the unit, and they'll leave it empty. And that's also going to create a black market for renter. So I think that will open a whole different can of worms, and what they're trying to achieve by it, which actually would be the opposite. So I would say strong no to Prop 33.
What about restoring these Art Deco buildings as you did with Villa Colada? Is this going to continue here?
I would love to. It would be amazing. I mean, we took it was a hard work, a lot of sweat and tears, but I think if I'll have the opportunity to do it again in LA, I would love to do it. There are a lot of beautiful buildings in the late 1920s that I think are underutilized and not able to enjoy, and it doesn't have to be just for the luxury. I mean, we can convert those buildings to workforce housing. We can convert some of the buildings to the low income and some to the luxury. It doesn't have to go to the luxury approach. But I think those treasures need to be found and needs to be polished. Because it would be a shame to leave those. I mean, when I bought this Villa Carlota, I bought it from an owner that owned that building from 1957. They have not invested any money in that building, and that's, again, go back to the Prop 33 for a simple reason. He was not able to increase the rent more than 3 or 4%. So there was a conflict of interest between the landlord and the city.
Giddy Cohen, thank you very much for joining us. Look forward to speaking with you from time to time and getting your view on things here. We wish you a good holiday this evening as well, and thank you very much for coming to the line. Giddy Cohen, developer and founder of CGI Plus here in the Los Angeles area. And stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang. I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon here. Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
The Jim Jackson Show isn't just another NBA podcast. Of course, I'll break down everything about the league that I played in for 14 years and now cover as a broadcaster. There will be plenty of interviews with the biggest players, personalities, and insiders in the NBA. I say there's more to life than ball. That's why on this podcast, I'm going to delve into other passions, maybe business and maybe travel. I love lifestyle. The Jim Jackson Show, wherever you listen.